Lewis class. Well, it does seem like it's been a very, very long time since I read the last chapter to you, but I managed to find some time. So here we are, carrying on the story. I hope you remember where we got up to. We're on chapter 22, Operation Fruit Burst. Lucky for us, dragon fruit grows surprisingly quickly, and by the start of the following week, the fruits had reached the size of mangoes and started to turn red. The plan was this: we could ask my granddad if we could camp in his garden overnight. Then it would be simple enough to sneak down to the vegetable patch and look for the hatching dragons. My grandparents wouldn't even know that we weren't even asleep. And surely there'd be no chance of running into Grim in the dead of night. Even luckier, there was a teacher training day at school on Friday, so we could camp on Thursday night, catch the dragons, and then have an extra long weekend to play with them. You really do have to admire our optimism. So with Kat and Kai and our team of organisers, Operation Fruit Burst got into full swing. Planning is what the twins do best, and by Wednesday morning we had provisions, plans, equipment lists, and an hour-by-hour timetable of the whole event. It wasn't the worst plan ever. It might have even worked. In the afternoon, as Flicker settled down in the toy box, scratching my latest comic into uncomfortable sized pieces for his bed, I looked at the list supplied by Captains Kat and Kai. I scanned to see what that was expected to bring. It seemed pretty thorough, you know, just for the one night. Provision and equipment list by Kat and Kai. Sandwiches, Kat. Marmite and peanut butter, honey and chocolate spread, golden syrup with hundreds and thousands. Cake, Ted's Basic Collection. Ice buns, currant buns, jam donuts, custard donuts, gingerbread, treacle tarts, lemon sprinkle, fairy cakes, chocolate muffins, chocolate chip cookies, chocolate cupcakes, and chocolate brownies. Chocolate, Kat and Kai's birthday leftovers. Emergency chocolate for hypothermia. Extra emergency chocolate for when Ted eats the emergency chocolate. Tent, sleeping bags, sleeping mats, torches, night vision goggles, walkie-talkies, compass, water bottles filled, mallets, bandages, smelly stuff for repelling bugs, string, woolly hat, nets, face paint. Useful books, Camping in the Wild Outdoors, The Ultimate Survival Handbook, How to Survive a Bear Attack, and 101 Deadly Plants. I wasn't sure whether I was going to get half of this stuff. The only walkie-talkies I could find were Lola's, Dora the Explorer ones, and I wasn't going to be taking those. As it turned out, the main thing we needed was the tent. I bet you can guess what we forgot. So there we were on Thursday, finally ready to put the plan into action, and yup, no tent. Luckily, Grandad had one kicking about in the garage, along with various bits of dodgy camping kit, including some rusty saucepans, which none of us fancy touching, let alone eating from, and an old lantern. We've had a fair few adventures with this lot, me and you and Anne, Grandad chuckled. Stick it in the front garden, Nana said, and then added, then the way you're nice and close for anyone needing to pop in to use the facilities. Which is her polite way of saying the downstairs loo, which was just inside the front door. So under Grandad's instruction and in between his stories of camping in the wilderness, we put it up. Smells like feet, whispered Kat, screwing up her nose. It looks a bit small, muttered Kai. And droopy, mouthed Ted. Good sturdy tent, said Grandad, resting his hand on one of the tent poles and then quickly taking it off again as the whole thing sagged precariously. Good job we aren't planning on sleeping much, murmured Ted. By the time Grandad left us to go inside, we had got it pretty well organised. There wasn't much room, but we figured out being that close together we would probably help prevent the whole hypothermia thing, which Kai insisted on reading it to us from the Horrendous Hazards and How to Avoid Them, a guide to camping safely. I'm not sure we needed to hear in such detail about the stages of frostbite or to see all those pictures of fingerless hands, but as camp doctor, he was taking no chances. Right, said Kat, as we huddled round the flickering lantern. Time to get camouflaged. Operation Fruit Burst is go. Chapter 23, Attack of the Killer Leaf. I like to say it happened like this. We strolled down to the end of the garden, picked up a few dragons, strolled back, and it was a good night's sleep in our luxurious tent. It didn't, though. First of all, the face paint we were going to use was camouflage stripes had dried up, so we improvised with dirt. Only Kai soon realised he'd actually used the horse manure Grandad keeps for his roses. Well, it's better than dragon poo, Ted snorted. Yeah, at least that doesn't explode, I added. We tried and failed to stifle our laughs. It's a good thing, said Kat, biting back a snigger. Animals won't smell your human whiffiness and run away, so it'll help us with sneaking up on the dragons. Go on then, you smear yourself with it, said Kai, who was getting grumpier by the second. If you want to escape a T-Rex, you cover yourself in poo so it won't eat you, said Kai in a fit of giggles. So if it's a big mummy dragon turns up, you'll be the safest one of us. I snorted so much that at that point that the lemonade I'd been guzzling shot out my nose. Shh, Kat suddenly hissed as the kitchen light flickered on. Grandpa appeared at the window and stared out at us. A second later, he was at the back door. Everything all right there, Thomas? He asked. No one's having second thoughts? I want you all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed tomorrow. I'll be looking forward to having some extra hands in the garden. Poor Grandad. I've been so busy looking after Flicker, I'd hardly spent any time helping him in the garden the last few weeks. We're all fine, thanks, Grandad, I said quickly. Just having a stretch out before bed. We all started stretching our arms up and running on the spot like we were in some sort of manic exercise video. Grandad looked at Kai's poo-smeared face. For a second, his eyebrows furrowed, and then he said, Okie dokie, sleep tight then. I smiled at him, but the heat from the lie was already burning my cheeks. I just hoped the mud was hiding it. We all felt quite brave talking it through beforehand, but when we actually ventured down the garden, we kept a bit closer together than normal, and no one said much. We were all too busy listening. Nighttime noises are freaky. Things that you don't notice in the day, like branches creaking in the breeze, suddenly make you twitchy. Every other tree casting a shadow that made it look like something terrifying monster was just about to jump out on us. So it wasn't surprising that we all shrieked in terror when a cat from Grin's garden made a high-pitched yowl as we passed. When we got down to the end, we were all a little bit jumpy, to say the least. In fact, when a stray leaf drifted down onto Kai's hair, he started karate chopping the air like in a mad panic, shouting, "Something's on me! Get it off! Get it off!" At which point we all leaped about as if we were being attacked until we finally figured it out. At least laughing about the attack of the killer leaf made us relax a bit. As we crept towards the dragon fruit tree, we began to realise we were not alone. Strange dark shapes flitted above us, careering about, darting over our heads and crisscrossing under the branches of trees. At first we thought they were bats, but when one of the winged creatures dived towards us, Cat, it soon became clear that they were dragons. A whole flock, herd-like, flying. I don't know what you call a mass of baby dragons, whatever you call it, we had one right there. I looked round to the others, Cat and her hands plastered over her open mouth, trying to hold back the squeal that was threatening to escape. Kai was standing, staring up at the trees, eyes wider than a wide-eyed lemur who had just sat on a drawing pin. And Ted looked like the cat who had not only got the cream, but a huge bowl of sardine trifle too. A few of the dragons were simply flying off into the moonlight sky, but others had obviously decided to stop for a bite to eat. It was easy to see why Grim thought he was the victim of vandals. The dragons were not exactly bothered about the mess they were making. They had finally found a way into his greenhouse and were happily demolishing the tiny new shoots. I knew exactly who the ones be getting the blame for that. Sparks fizzled in the night as the little dragons darted from one plant to the next. "Quick!" said Ted, waking up from a stupefied glazing. "Get the nets!" We dashed around fruitlessly, trying to capture the flitting dragons in our fishing nets. But they were way too speedy for us. We staggered about the garden, tripping over brambles and landing in muddy heaps. "This is no good," cried Cat. "We'll never catch them like this." She watched sadly as another dragon zipped over her head and flew up and away into the night. Suddenly there was a thump, and we turned to see one of the fruits drop from the tree. A second later, the spiky skin began to bulge, and then, just as with Flicker, the fruit burst open and out shot a little grey dragon with yellow spines. Before any of us could get it, it had darted away. We made our way to the dragon fruit tree and gathered round it, eyeing up each of the fruits still left hanging there. A handful of them were fat and red and ripe. All we had to do was wait. Here be the dragons, chapter 24. But as you know already, some of us aren't very good at waiting. Maybe we could just pick them like apples, Ted suggested, prodding a low-hanging fruit. Perhaps the dragons only hatch when they come off the tree. They'll have to fall off, Cat said. You can't pull them off because they're ready. And before they're ready. Why not? Ted asked. They look ripe. Thomas, tell him, Cat urged. Oh, what do you do, Thomas? Ted asked. Flicker's fruit just came off in my hand, I said, remembering how I held it and gently lifted it aside out of the way of the others. Cat was frowning at me, while Ted gave me a knowing look. They obviously didn't believe what I had said. It had just dropped off. I wasn't sure I'd pulled it off, though. At least I hope I hadn't. I looked at Flicker, who was almost as tiny as the day I found him, and suddenly wondered if he had hatched too soon. What if he wasn't growing properly because of me? Maybe this wasn't such a good idea. Cat cupped her hands gently around one of the fruit. This one feels too hard to be ripe. I think we should leave them, she said, until they're ready. We can come back tomorrow. And hope they don't drop off, hatch and fly away in the meantime, you mean? Said Kai crossly. If that's what it means, yes, said Kat sternly. I could tell the twins were about to lock horns. I kept my eyes on the dragon fruit in Kat's hands. Wait, Kat, look! I said, it's glowing. And only then the fruit was no longer attached. And not only that, the fruit was no longer attached to the tree. I didn't pull it off, Kat cried immediately. Before any of us could reply, the fruit started to bulge. A minute later, with a loud pop, the thing exploded. We stood open-mouthed, splattered by a spray of fruity pulp, and then on the ground was a tiny purple dragon covered in sicky, seedy goo. Kat let out an excited squeak as the dragon stretched its neck and raised its long, elegant head, sniffing the air. When it opened its wings, we could see shades of purple lightning in a beautiful electric blue. The pattern swirled like the dark tie-dye T-shirts we had made in art. The dragon had fewer spines than Flicker, but under its jaw were spikes, hanging down like icicles. Quick as a flash, Kat gathered it up under her hands, delighted. As she scraped the sticky pulp off the dragon's wings, Ted and Kai started reaching out to the other fruit left on the tree, feeling each one in turn. Careful, I cried, just be careful. At first nothing happened. None of the fruits did anything, but then one of the ones Kai was holding flickered and began to glow. Kat's hand sagged as the weight of it fell onto his palm. And then pop. Another dragon shot out. This one was a vivid greeny blue with scales that glistened like the sea on a really hot day. Look at its wings, Kat whispered. They look like peacock feathers. And she was right. Although not exactly feathers, the detail on the wings formed a feather design, and there were shapes like yellow and blue eyes leading to the outer edge, just like a peacock. Ted's eyes stayed fixed on the tree as if he was looking up for the perfect fruit. He reached up to squeeze a few of the redder ones. Ow! He yelled, drawing his hand out. Rotten tree, bit me. I laughed. It's got some fierce thorns on it. He sucked out the scratch, but since he had a mouthful of marshmallow in his hand, came away until covered in pink stickiness. Undeterred, he thrust his hand back. It brushed one of the fruits, and he stifled a yell of excitement as the fruit suddenly shone as if his touch had turned into gold. Carefully cradled it in his hands, holding his breath, and then, just like the others, almost as it had chosen it in his hand to fall into, the fruit let go of the tree. Immediately, it started to swell up, the red skin stretching under the pressure of the creature, wriggling inside, fighting its way out. And then in a burst, sending a spray of pulp all over Ted. But he didn't look as if he minded one bit as he held up a slender yellow dragon. The shine from its golden scale made his hands glow brightly. He stared at it, and his mouth hanging open. Not to get all poetic or anything, but if you'd been able to hold a bit of the sun, that's what I imagine it would look like. Only without the hand-melting heat, of course. Standing there, holding our dragons, we looked at each other with stupid grins plastered on our faces. I had to admit, it was going to be pretty cool to have all these dragons. End of chapter 24. Only a couple of more chapters left. Speak to you very soon, Lewis class. Bye-bye.